Okay, and welcome. My name is Iain Gillot from IGR, and we're here today with Shlomo Rakib, who's the CEO of Cohere Technologies. And I've got some questions for you today, primarily around OTFS. And the first one is, who is Cohere and what is OTFS?
Well, thank you for having me here. Cohere is a young startup, about 65 people based in Santa Clara, focusing on radio access technology. Using its new air interface. We called it OTFS, which stands for Orthogonal Time, Frequency, and Space. And really, it's about a new way to look at the wireless channel and trying to extract capacity the best we could do, taming those waves up on the air. Okay,
so today we use OFDM in the air interface with LTE. How does OTFS differ from OFDM? Too many acronyms.
Right. OTFS completely changes the view about wireless. You know wireless as a fading channel. You know wireless as unstable. You know wireless as choppy and susceptible to motion, mobility, and change in environment. OTFS brings a complete new view on the wireless channel. As I said, offers much more stability, offers much more capacity, higher peak rates, a more ubiquitous coverage, which eventually is essential for any radio access technology. When you are offering a service, you want to make sure that all people in the same cell would get same speed. And get it continuously, more stable, more predictable.
And so we need to do this with a new modulation?
Absolutely. OFDM has been there forever, and time for a successor. Yeah. OTFS is definitely the successor for OFDM. As I said, it brings a complete new view and gets us to where Shannon has predicted. Gets us the scale that we need, gets us the throughput that we need, gets us the, as I said, the stability, the coverage, and the ubiquity.
Right. And so how do you see OTFS being implemented?
So OTFS will find its way in many, many use cases. It will be in base stations. It will be in CPE devices. It will be on your cell phone. It will be inside the home. Offering better coverage inside the home and better home networking. It will be in IoT. So again, there are many, many, many instances of OTFS that will show up over the few years.
And what do you see this meaning for the mobile operators we have today?
What OTFS can do for the operators is the following: better user experience, less complaints, better planning. Time to market much faster, essentially for deployment. Reduction in OpEx, in CapEx. Again, the contribution for OTFS for the operators could be tremendous. More revenue by offering more services and more capacity. Scale in number of devices, scale in total throughput. So again, that's what we'll do for operator.
Okay, good. And what about the standards bodies? Because obviously we've got a big industry here that's driven the standards, and everybody's. How do you fit in with 3GPP and those kind of folks?
Absolutely. We've been working with 3GPP since 2015, and we're contemplating release 16 to become a standard. I think OTFS addresses many of the use cases and the new requirements from 5G. People are starting to realize that. We are doing lots of trials to prove, and eventually will become a standard.
Right. So 5G is technically 3GPP release 15, right? You're talking about release 16 for OTFS. So you're really kind of positioning this as like a 5G Pro type approach, right?
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
Okay.
This is like an advanced 5G, and as you said, a 5G Pro, to widen the use cases and addresses all the challenges that 5G will be addressing in the future.
See, it's great. Just when we think we're getting on top of everything, and I'm up to date with release 14 and 15, now you're going to throw out release 16 for us. So keeps moving. It keeps moving.
I think the goal is to serve the industry and specifically the end users and continue eventually evolve the wireless industry.
Right. So what do you see as the strongest use cases for OTFS?
Okay. OTFS, I would say, to start with, will address much better the fixed wireless access by offering better scale, a lot more capacity, a lot more users, a lot higher data rates, stable, predictable. So that would be, I would say, one of the first instances of OTFS. Second instance, I would say, which will come a little bit later, is when it comes to any extreme mobility. V2V and V2X is a case. You would have relative speeds of 250 kilometers an hour, requiring delivery reliably of a payload because it's mission critical. So when it comes to high reliability, when it comes to high speed, OTFS is the answer for that. So these are, I would say, essentially two of the important cases in 5G, and OTFS is there to serve these two use cases.
Okay, so you mentioned some trials. So what trials have you done, and what's the results been from there? What have you seen?
So we've done over the years numerous trials with many of the carriers, including Telstra, Telefonica, Altice, Charter. All of these trials were about coverage, stability, reliability, peak data rates, and all of them have been very successful to the satisfaction of the carriers, and eventually putting plans towards eventually using this as part of its service.
Right. And the trials have been both mobility and fixed examples?
We've done some mobility in a limited case, but we'll have many of those mobility trials over the next year.
Okay, good. Yeah. It's funny how people want to move and watch video. My kids just take it as completely normal to do that. So, yeah. And what's the reaction been back from the carriers, from the operators?
I would say essentially a repeating sentence. Why aren't you a standard?
Okay, that's pretty good. Pretty good endorsement, right?
It tells the whole story.
Yeah,
it tells the whole story.
Yeah. So we're here today. It's late November 2017. What are the next steps you see for Cohere in the next few months, maybe the next year, and then further out from there? Where do you go next?
Okay. We will be releasing for commercial availability a product mid next year. And obviously, one of the big goals would be, again, continue work with the standard bodies to go and finalize essentially that release 16. We'll continue doing a lot of trials with many of the well-known operators across the globe. And it's a pretty busy year for us.
Yeah. So final question, and it's one I always like to finish with on interviews like this. What keeps you awake at night? What worries you the most that you don't think the industry is addressing, or that the operators have to address as we move into 5G in the next few years? What do you think is the biggest thing we have to overcome?
I think from my point of view, how do we disseminate that message, and how to educate eventually the whole industry about OTFS and what it can do, and how it will change eventually the world in many senses. One of the major ones that is no need for more spectrum. How eventually to reuse that spectrum again and again and again to address the required capacity to address all of these new cases. And this is, I would say, one of the biggest contribution that we bring to the industry. And again, being able to clear that message and demonstrate it is what keeps me awake at night.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Good
Thank
talking
you.
to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Iain.
Thanks.